Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. So today I will be filming my actual story over the past 18 months to 2 years. It is my personal story and this is the reason why I'm creating the channel. Like, this is what got me, I guess, motivated to begin this channel. Everything is real. I'm not gonna lie about anything. I apologize for the length of this video. I will try and make it as quick as possible, but I just want to make sure that I get everything in and fill you in as much as possible. So early last year I began training for the 2018 World Championships. My partner Caitlin and I were pretty much training like non-stop to prepare ourselves as best as we could for the World Championship. We just wanted to make sure we were putting everything in that we could to make sure that we would do our best over there. So in the lead up to the World Championships, I actually began to get some quite severe like back pain. I tried to like train through it for a little while, but it just got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to go get scans or something. I was seeing physios. They were just trying to treat it, but it just wasn't doing as much as it probably should have. So I went and got some scans done. They all came back saying I was fine, it was clear. So obviously all my doctors and physios have gone, okay, there's nothing wrong, let's keep treating it and keep training. That's exactly what I did. During like mid 2017 and like 2018, I was definitely at my fittest. I was so super toned and lean. I'll insert some photos for you guys to have a look. Like, you can see like how lean I was. My abs were clearly there. Like, I was training so hard and I did have the body to show for it. Now, I remember I used to look at these photos and think, okay, I'm going to compare it to this now and I have to lose this and I have to look like that. And now I look back at these photos and I'm just like, oh my god, you are crazy woman. Honestly, I think if I had gotten any smaller, I wouldn't have been able to do the sport that I was doing. But like I said, I was super fit and I was super lean, and I definitely took it for granted back then. So Caitlin and I went on to Worlds with our coach Steve and we did amazing. Once I was there, I was just like, I've trained 10 years for this. This is what I'm doing. Forget about it all and just do exactly what I've been taught to do. I learned so much while being there. I'm not going to go into detail because I will literally be here forever. But yeah, just to sum it up, I couldn't be prouder of what we achieved. It was definitely an experience that I'll never forget. After the comp, we went on to Amsterdam, Bali, and then to Perth. And I really enjoyed my month off. Like, I didn't train, just enjoyed time to relax, rest my back. And then once we got back to Melbourne, it was back to training and getting ready for our next goal. After coming back from the World Championships, my boyfriend and I of 6 years actually split up. We were just parting ways and we just started to have like different interests, and we just had to do what was best for both of us. The breakup wasn't nice, but what breakup is meant to be nice. I definitely know like after this stage is definitely when I started to get some form of anxiety and depression, and when it really kind of started to kick in for me. We both had been together from such a young age that it was kind of all we knew. We did acro together, we travelled together, we competed together. So really the only time we were apart was when he was at work and I was either at school or at work. I think we got to the point where we were together so much and then to part ways, and yeah, it was really difficult because like I said, it was all we kind of knew. But it is what it is and everything happens for a reason. So I actually turned 18 the December in 2017. I didn't really go out much because I was training for the Worlds and I just didn't want to jeopardize anything, and I just like, that was my goal for 10 years, so I wasn't going to waste it. I was going to put everything I could into it. I wanted to get there and know that I've given everything. However, when I came back from Worlds, I was obviously having some downtime. Training wasn't so intense, there was no really comps coming up, so I did use that time to enjoy it. So I actually wasn't back from Europe for too long before I actually got really sick. I was at home for a week where I got stomach pains, sore throat, I had a rash all over my body. I'll insert some photos so you can see. I was literally in bed for a week not knowing what was going on. I'd been to the doctor, got antibiotics, had a reaction to them. So I ended up in the emergency room with my mum. I just was so ill. The pain, oh, it was just honestly horrible. We spent a few hours there while they did tests and checked everything for me. So the test actually came back with glandular fever, tonsillitis and appendicitis. So I got hit with all three, but they do say things come in three. But yeah, I really got a good hit of all of them. As soon as they found out what it was, they took me straight up to the hospital and pretty much prepped me for surgery to get my appendix removed. So I finally had my appendix removed, and they also removed some lymph nodes that were super swollen from the glandular. Waking up from that surgery was not fun. Luckily, we had told them that I am allergic to anesthetic and I usually wake up vomiting after every surgery, so they did actually use something else this time, and I didn't wake up vomiting, thank God, because the pain in my stomach, I couldn't like laugh, cough, sneeze, nothing. Like, it was just so painful. I stayed in hospital for 2 nights just so they could monitor everything, keep me hydrated, giving me the medications that I needed. The day I was actually allowed to leave, they'd gotten me up, showered me, gotten me ready to leave, and we were walking out of the hospital and I actually collapsed. They got me straight back into the hospital bed and did more tests, did an ECG, put me on 2 more drips just to make sure I was hydrated, checked my heart and everything. It was all fine. So I stayed in the hospital for another 5 hours with my mum just to make sure everything was all good. And then I finally got wheelchaired to the car and got taken home safely. It was so nice to be home in my own bed on my own couch. So that weekend I actually also decided to go off the contraceptive pill. I had been on it for about, I think, 2 years since I first got my period when I was 16, and the reason I went on it is because I had very irregular periods, so they obviously put me on that to try and regulate them. So I spent the first 2 weeks in my bed and on the couch, could not move. My stomach pain was that bad from the surgery that I was physically not able to do anything. So I spent a total of 6 weeks where I wasn't allowed to lift anything over 5 kilos, and if you know me well, you know that was super hard for me. In that 6 weeks I really struggled with my anxiety and depression, knowing that I couldn't go and do anything, and for me being so active and being stuck on the couch in pain, it just really got to me and really frustrated me. During these 6 weeks off, I did start to notice that I was gaining some weight. Now, there was still swelling and everything from the surgery, but it didn't warrant all the weight gain that I had put on. I was not exercising, which doesn't help, but I wasn't eating horrible. Like, there was some comfort eating, but I was still aware of what I was putting in my body, and it just didn't warrant all the weight that I had put on. So from my surgery, which was in July, till about 2 to 3 months after, I had actually put on 12 kilos. So this was me before Worlds, and this was me about August, September last year. You can definitely see the difference significantly, and it wasn't a huge amount of time. And for me, I've never been one to put on weight quickly, let alone that much amount of weight. I did fall into a hole, and I just was so depressed about this weight gain. It just wasn't healthy for me, and mentally and physically. I couldn't figure out why this weight was piling on the way it was. I began to be so super uncomfortable in my own skin and who I was, that I just really spiraled out of control. The anxiety and depression really just took off from this point. Just the fact that my clothes started not to fit, or that I just didn't want people to see me after how fit and how lean that I was before everything had happened. In that time, I also started to notice some acne on my skin, and I've never been a type to have bad skin. I was always lucky enough to have really, really good skin. Really set me probably over the edge. Again, I didn't know what was happening and why all of this was happening. I definitely did not feel like me at this point. I wasn't allowed to train. I just felt like I didn't know who I was or what was happening to me, and it got me so down. Like, I was in such a bad place mentally and physically that I just lost control of everything that was going on. So when I was allowed to go back to training and start training again and slowly build it back up, I was so afraid to put my training clothes on and go to the gym, because that whole gym knew me to be fit and toned, lean, and it's just not what or who I was anymore. And I just was so afraid to walk back in there and have people who look up to me to see me like that, even though I knew it wasn't my fault and there wasn't nothing I could do about it because I had no control over it. But I just knew that people would look at me differently, think about me differently, and it was just so frightening to go back in there. During these about 3 to 4 months, I really was probably at my darkest point. I was just constantly having bad negative thoughts that I just couldn't put away. I couldn't put aside. I had extra weight I was holding. I had super bad skin that I was so uncomfortable with. I couldn't train at 100% because I was still recovering from my surgery, and it was all getting to me. I felt like everything, like one thing after another, just kept hitting, but I wasn't dealing. I was just spiraling out of control. I was at the point where I honestly cried myself to sleep every single night for a good chunk of time, and I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to talk to people. I kept everything to myself, which is the worst thing to do, but it's what I did because I had never dealt with all of this before. I didn't know what to do. So I actually wrote down in my phone the date I admitted that I thought I had depression, which was June 17th. So now that was before my surgery, before I got sick, and was more around when my boyfriend and I were splitting up. I was obviously so afraid to admit I had depression because it is so frowned upon and people just look at you differently. People think you're sick, or you know, you don't actually have anything going on. Like, it's made such a big thing that people are so afraid to speak up, and it's horrible. So this was the point where I actually started to get some suicidal thoughts. Everything that I was going through was getting to my head, and I just let it affect me. I never wanted to do anything. I never wanted to train, and that is huge for me because I have never ever not wanted to train, because acro has been my life. And for me to not want to step outside the door and go to the gym is just absolutely insane for me. I remember this one night I was sitting out on my balcony, and it was about 11 or 12 at night, and I was just sitting there wrapped up in a blanket. It was absolutely freezing. I was just crying non-stop, and I just thought, why am I here? Like, what is happening to me? Who am I? I just felt like I wasn't even me. It was honestly one of the worst feelings, sitting there thinking, what am I worth? Why should I be here? Like, it was just, you get so caught up in your own thoughts, and then it spiraled. So I probably had suicidal thoughts for a good couple months, where I just thought it would be easier if I wasn't here, and no one would have to put up with what I was going through, or have to try and deal with it, or help me through this process when it isn't their problem. I felt like every day was just getting worse and worse. And obviously when you're in such a dark place, everything that happens is 10 times worse than what it actually is. I really just didn't want to weigh or bring other people down with what I was going through when it's not their problem. I know friends and family there to help, but I just felt there was so much happening that it just wasn't worth it. It sounds horrible, but you know, it's the truth, and that's what I'm here to tell you. So I just literally felt like no one should have to put up with what I was going through. I felt at that point that literally no one could help me or what I was going through, because it was just one thing after another, and I was seeing so many doctors, so many different opinions, that I would get overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do, that I would just freak out and not do anything and make it worse, and then my thoughts in my head would make it 1,000 times worse. And it just goes in a circle. You're fighting the same battle in your head. So for me, the suicidal thoughts were most of the time always just in my head. I'll be honest, I never hurt myself. There were a few times where I did try and suffocate myself, which is super hard to say out loud because it sounds horrible, but I never actually put myself in physical harm. I just had all the thoughts and thinking how easy it would be if I just was gone, and it sounds horrible and it's so hard to say, but yeah, it's just when you get in such a dark place, I couldn't help it. Like, it just is instantly what I would think of. I knew after a couple months of going through this vicious circle that I just had to go and speak to someone. It was getting out of control, and I couldn't control myself. So I did go and speak to my coach. I told her absolutely everything I was feeling, thinking, doing, that I got it all out. And it did feel good to actually speak to someone and cry to someone and say, I do need help and I can't do this on my own. I explained to her that I didn't even want to do acro. And it came to a shock to everyone, because like, Tori has never not wanted to do acro. So obviously for me to say it and for my coach to hear it, and it was just so ridiculous and so hard. One of the biggest reasons why I knew I needed to get help, because acro is my life and I needed to change that. I needed to get back in the gym and be doing what I love doing. I then obviously began to speak to my mum and my dad about it, and then we had meetings with my coaches and worked around ways to keep me in the gym, keep me doing somewhat activity, and dropped my hours, dropped the training load, kept it more fun and something I could go and do that just took my mind off everything. I focused on training when I was there. So it was definitely a good idea that I stayed there. I obviously started to try some different diets, and I can tell you there was lots of them. And obviously to gain so much weight in such a short amount of time, to think I was just going to drop it instantly is ridiculous, because it wasn't going to happen. But you would do it for a couple of weeks and like, okay, nothing's moving, let's try something else. And instead of just sticking to one long-term plan, it's obviously so hard. It just really got to me. The weight gain honestly was so, like, the most difficult thing probably out of the whole entire situation that I went through. This is where I got so ashamed of myself and what I looked like, that my relationship with food went out of control. Like, obviously I was trying different diets, and then I got to the point where I didn't eat, or I would starve myself, or I just was like, okay, well, if I'm not losing weight from these diets, then I just can't eat. That is really hard to pick back up and change, which is only just starting to happen now. So we actually withdrew from nationals last year in September because we just weren't ready to compete. So in that couple of months when we dropped the training load, dropped the hours, my back pain did decrease. I kind of slowly started to figure out ways to pull myself out of this hole and to find little ways that would make me smile or make me happy, make me laugh, and to get my mind drifting off what I was going through and to know that things will turn around. Just try and find little ways that would completely take my mind off it and just to go and have fun. Once I got to the point where I was allowed to start training a bit more, I was like, okay, I need to drop this weight, because if I'm going to start competing again, if I want to put a leotard back on, I need to look fit. So that was when I was back training 3 or 4 hours a night. I was then training at my home gym in the morning for an hour. I had to smash out some cardio. I was overexhausting myself. But at the time I was like, yep, this is fun. I'm going to lose weight. I'm doing heaps of training. You know, I'm hardly eating. This is going to be great. I'm going to drop it in no time. I began to feel a little bit more at ease in my mind, knowing that I was training heaps and hardly eating, and that I would drop the weight, which is stupid. I knew that my feelings towards acro would change when I started to dig myself out of the hole, so I didn't want to make any sort of decision on acro until I was in the right headspace. I had my parents, my coaches, my family, my friends keeping a close eye on me just to make sure that I was going to get through this stage, and they were mentoring me and helping me. By this time, it was probably like towards the end of last year. It'd been going on for about 4 or 5 months where it was just like waves of depression and anxiety. I would go through days or weeks where I'd feel really, really great and then really, really shit. Obviously I had my friends and family comforting me, knowing that it would be like this for quite a while, and I knew that it was going to be difficult and it wouldn't be easy and that it was going to go in waves. So coming up to the end of last year, we actually set the goal of competing at the 2019 Vegas Acro Cup, which we then soon found out it was a World Cup, and Caitlin and I were eligible to trial for. So we got back into the gym and I said, yeah, this is my goal, a World Cup, amazing opportunity, I'm eligible to do it. I slowly built up the hours, built up the training, but unfortunately while doing that, my back pain started to increase again. Kept pushing through it because I knew that there was other stuff that I was dealing with that I just kind of kept putting that to the side, and I had scans showing it was nothing. I just kept going, and then it just got to a point where I couldn't get through a routine without being in tears, or I would have to lay on the floor for 5 to 10 minutes after a routine because it was just so sore. I also started to gain pain in my left hip, and I just assumed it was like referring from my back. Then I thought, okay, let's go and get another one, get it all sorted. So I actually got recommended to a sports doctor kind of / women's health doctor, and we were kind of hoping that she would also be able to help with the health issues that I was going through and kind of have an answer to the acne, the weight gain and everything. So remember I also told you I went off the pill July last year after my surgery. So from July until this point, so it's been about 6 months, I haven't actually had a period through all of these months. I didn't get one period. I was hoping that this doctor could also have an answer for that. So my first appointment with her was January, February this year. Went in and explained everything to her. She was very shocked, to say the least, that I had been through so much in such a short amount of time and for someone so young. So she then sent me for an MRI on my back and my hip and an ultrasound internal and external on my stomach. So I went back, I think 1 to 2 weeks later. I had stress fractures in my L2 and my L3 of my vertebrae, and I had a labral tear in my hip. So that at least gave me some answers as to why I had so much back pain, and to finally find something was really upsetting but also a relief. And I was also diagnosed with pretty severe PCOS. PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome, and that is a syndrome where it affects your hormones. You get cysts on your ovaries, which can cause a lot of pain, which is what I was having. With PCOS, you produce higher than normal amounts of male hormone. So the doctor explained to me that to diagnose PCOS, you have an average of about 10 to 12 cysts on each ovary. However, I had 25 on one ovary and 35 cysts on the other ovary. So it was pretty severe. So she went through all the side effects of PCOS with me. So the top 3 for me with PCOS would be the irregular period / no period at all, the weight gain, and the acne. Now I'll insert some pictures here for you guys to see of my acne and how bad it got. I was in so much pain. So with my acne on top of the weight gain, it hit me pretty hard, but in one way I was kind of glad and relieved that we had found an answer to something. So the doctor that I saw, her plan was for me to go and have a cortisone in my hip and have 2 weeks of absolutely no training and then slowly build it back up, and then to go and see a gynecologist for the PCOS and to start maintaining it and figuring out what I can do. After that, my mum and I went and did so much research on PCOS just to figure out, like, there's so many different types and side effects and symptoms. Like, it was just so overwhelming to see how much it can actually affect you. Obviously, we had to make a decision. We had set our goal to compete at the Vegas Acro World Cup in March 2019, and with that being not too far away, we really had to make the decision quite quickly. Obviously, I broke down in the doctor's office because she didn't want me to compete, and that it was best that if I was to sit back, rest everything, get it all sorted, and focus on my goal towards competing at the World Championships again in 2020. It was so difficult because I was like, yeah, you are right, but also I've dealt with this back pain for so long, and that I had been told by physios that because I'd had it for so long that they kind of weren't getting worse. So I also had the sports doctor tell me that because of the sport I do, it was just continually putting more stress on the bone, and that if I had keep going, then it could easily completely break right through my vertebrae. And yes, that sounds horrible, and that's not something I wanted to deal with. It's so hard to take in all the different opinions. I guess it was down to me and what decision I was going to make. I sat down with my mum and my coaches, and we really had a good chat, and I did decide to go through and compete at the World Cup on a super modified training. Now, there was only about 6 weeks to go, so we had all our routines, we had all our skills, and it was now just maintaining what we had. So I pretty much spent that 6 weeks going in and doing what I needed to do. We monitored the pain, we modified the training programs and everything that I had to do to get me by and to get me through. It was super hard knowing that I couldn't train at 110% and that I was training at probably 40 to 60% for that 6 weeks. And in a lead up to a World Cup, it's not really what you want, but I was still so grateful that I could go and compete. I was able to experience a World Cup. I think it was 2 to 3 weeks out from Vegas, and I actually had an incident at training where I went to hang on the bars, hanging straight down just to like stretch out my back. I completely blanked out and I collapsed. Luckily, I wasn't far from the ground and I had a mat underneath me, but I completely collapsed and had like a mini kind of seizure thing. Then I woke up to my body like convulsing and a bunch of heads looking over me. Obviously panicked straight away and started to cry and had no idea what was going on. And luckily enough, one of the athletes at our gym is a nurse, and one of the athletes' mum is a nurse. They came in, had a chat with me, figured out what had happened, did some like little quick tests. Yeah, it was just a really big shock and I had no idea what would happen or why it happened. Obviously they called my mum to come and pick me up. They didn't want me driving, so I kind of just lay there for half an hour, relaxed, had something to eat, had something to drink. I came home that night, but then we headed to the doctor that morning. He explained he thought it was a vasovagal syncope. I think that's how you say it. So it's pretty much where you have a sudden drop of heart rate and blood pressure leading to collapsing. And because, sorry, I'm reading from here because I can't remember it all. Because I was hanging from my hands with arms above my head, I blocked all the oxygen getting to my brain, which caused me to have like a mini seizure. So pretty scary when you kind of say it like that. He definitely said I wasn't eating enough. I wasn't hydrated enough. He sent me for an ECG just to make sure everything was fine with my heart. It all looked normal. He didn't want me driving until I was back from the States. I had to take some iron tablets to make sure my iron levels were up, and I had to make sure that I was getting my eating monitored just to make sure I was getting enough nutrients in my body. I wasn't allowed to shower with the door closed or locked just in case something had happened and someone had to come and help me. Just like little things like that. It is quite scary, I know, but he did all the tests and said that I was fine and that I would be fine to keep going. And it was just kind of like a one-time thing. Obviously, don't go and hang from the bar again for a little while, but yeah, I was fine. So with that only being 2 weeks out from leaving, I trained those 2 weeks, just did what I had to get by. So the day finally came, we flew off to Vegas, and it was an experience of a lifetime, one of the best trips I've probably ever been on. I struggled a little bit at the start because I got quite sick. I got bronchitis, and actually pretty bad bronchitis. I was struggling to sleep at night. I had to sleep upright because I couldn't lay down, I couldn't breathe. Yeah, we got through it like I said. Couldn't have asked for a better outcome after all that had happened and everything that I, along with my partner Caitlin and my coaches, my parents, my family, everything that we had been through to get there. It was just so rewarding, and we came out as World Cup silver medalists. So I look back and I honestly don't regret anything. It was such an amazing experience, and to come out with a silver medal was just icing on the cake. I think the best 2 moments in Vegas would be walking off the floor knowing you know, we'd finished a great routine, but then to walk backstage and know that we had just won a silver medal, and then walking around to the stands where my coach Mel was sitting, we just ran to each other and just burst into tears and just gave each other the biggest hug and looked at each other as if we knew we fucking did it, because we had been through all of this, and to come out with a silver medal at a World Cup is just, it still is so surreal. Like, for me to say it, like, I would never have thought I would be a World Cup silver medalist, and to get that, knowing what I've been through, was just incredible. And then obviously stepping onto the podium with our medals around me, standing next to one of my best friends, still makes me so emotional, but I said I'm not going to cry in this video. Yeah, it was just honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had. We continued on to Texas, where we had a training camp, but unfortunately I did almost no training because I was so sick and my body was really just coming down from everything. And then once I finally stopped and my mind had switched off from competing and getting through Vegas, that my body just went, yep, okay, I'm done now. After coming home, it was time to rest, fix everything, get myself back on track with my injuries and my health, and just literally focus on that. I went on a 3-month modified training program where it was literally building from the complete basics. My doctor said he didn't want me competing at nationals, which was in June. He wanted me to build all my weaknesses and make them really, really strong, and then focus on the next goal, which would have been 2020 World Championships. So in terms of my health and my weight at that point, I did lose, I think, about 2 to 3 kilos in Vegas. Now, it probably wasn't because of the best reason. I really wasn't eating much over there because I was so sick. We were training, competing. There was a lot of things. I was also having so much fun and I was happy over there. So I kind of was just forgetting about everything. And then coming home, I think in the first probably 2 months, I gained between 3 to 5 kilos again. Just like that. My skin got so bad again. This is one of the worst videos you can see. It was red, raw, active. I couldn't sleep on my sides at all. I couldn't touch my face. It was just honestly so painful. I flew over to Perth in June this year to go and visit my family and have a bit of a break. They definitely did notice a big difference in me in general. Like, I didn't train, I think it was a week. I just enjoyed it, and then I wanted to come home and go, yeah, I'm making a difference from here. Like, this is where I'm gonna stop. I'm going to build myself back up and bring back the Tori that everyone knew me to be. So I came home and I got recommended to another GP / gynecologist / health professional, kind of nutritionist. He was a bit of everything. And I went into him and I explained that I didn't want to go on medication and I wanted to heal this naturally, which is what I was trying to do in the past year. We're in about we're in June and I still haven't had a period. So it's been almost a year since I haven't had a period. And he explained to me that sometimes when you get so far from normal that you need some sort of medication to get back on track with your health. And I thought, you know what? I've tried so many different things. I'm going to give this a go. His aim wasn't for me to be on them forever. Like, he wants to keep me on them for a few months, get everything moving, kind of slowly get back to, you know, myself, and then we'll slowly work myself off these medications. We walked out of his office in tears because we finally felt like things were going to look up. So I've been on these medications since about June, July this year, and yes, I have noticed big changes. I haven't lost a huge amount of weight as such, but my body has definitely changed. This is about what I'm sitting at now. Definitely have, I guess you could say, trimmed down a little bit. My skin has cleared up so much. This is where I'm at with my skin. Like, I took this photo the day I filmed this, so definitely you can see how much it's cleared up. My skin is so smooth. It's just like a little bit of scarring now that we're trying to clear up, but definitely don't have that active, painful, cysty acne that I did have. And I finally got a period, which, crazy enough, I actually got it the exact same weekend that I went off the pill last year. So exactly 1 year between periods. The weight is still being managed. I'm not worried about the number on the scales anymore. I am purely wanting to get back to me feeling super confident for just myself, not for anyone else and not for that number on the scales. I genuinely want to feel good. I definitely am not in the place that I was last year mentally. I'm in a much more happier place now, and I'm just finding ways to get through and to really make sure that I'm happy. I'm putting my health first now. It's the most important thing. My outlook on life has completely changed. I feel like a new person. I am just enjoying life now, and I'm just really grateful with who I'm becoming. And yes, I may not be that fit, lean, super toned Tori, but you know, I love who I am now, and I love this journey of finding my way and finding what works for me. So that has been pretty much my last, I think about 18 months it is. Yeah, it's been pretty full on. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard, and one of the hardest battles that I've ever come across. I look back and I have learned so much from it, and I am becoming who I am because of what I've been through. While I was planning this video, I was so emotional. It's so hard to put myself back there and think how I felt, what I was thinking, what I felt like. I was in tears writing down everything because it's so hard to look back on that and think that that's what it was last year. Obviously, it's so hard to actually post this and people to see me at my darkest point, and to see me when I gained all this weight, and to see how I looked before. But yeah, I am not ashamed anymore. I will speak openly about it because it is something that should not be frowned upon. Everyone should be out there to help and support each other. I'm really sorry guys if this was a really long video, but I just wanted to make sure that I got everything in, and for you guys to get a really good understanding of what I have been through and why this is such a passion of mine. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.